Hi guys, today topic we're going to be doing a quick review of the new Nikon D750. Brilliant new camera just released by Nikon. Now let's take a look at the battery and memory card slots on this camera. Well, good news is it runs off the same battery as the D600, D610 and the D800 and D810, so that's good. They didn't go and change the battery around again like they did on the DF. What they did change though is the orientation of the battery and the little battery door. So instead of the battery sliding in this way around, it usually does, and some of the other Nikons slides in a different angle now, which probably gave them more space in the handle and the whole design, so it could be able to make it slimmer and nicer to hold and probably lighter as well, so that's great. And if you look at the memory card slots, you see it's got a dual SD card slot, which is really handy. The little door feels a little bit flimsy. I think that could have been better, but yeah, well, it works. Now the most apparent new feature on this camera is a flippable LCD screen at the back. Now, it's quite maneuverable, and this will be really handy when you're filming video at strange angles, or even when you're doing photography at either low angles or high angles, and it will really help you a lot to be more creative. We really like this feature. Also, the screen is nice and bright, really accurate in colors, and it just feels good in the hand as well. Now the buttons at the back has a good feel about them. They're quite responsive, nice and squishy feel, but I do feel they're a little bit close to the edges of the screen here, and the screen sticks out a little bit at the back, so it just feels awkward getting in there, especially on the multi-directional selector switch here at the back that probably could have been designed a little bit better, but it is still usable. Just feels a little bit awkward when you want to work on this side of the switch. So what's new with the button layout at the back? Well, like on the D810, we now have an info button at the back that gives us direct quick access to all the settings on the camera, and on here if we want to change anything, if we hit our ISO button, we can control our ISO, and you'll see the menu looks different than some of the other Nikons. It's really good, especially the white balance one looks really fancy. And we now have control of our white balance and our fine tweaking of the white balance all in one. So you don't have to go through cumbersome menus anymore to get to that quick access, which is really good. It seems that this is all that this camera is about, having quick access to your controls. And like on the D810, we have the handy I button down here that gives us a shortcut to some of the most often used menu shortcuts or settings, so we can get to it as quick as possible, which is really handy. If we're in live view mode and we hit the I button, we also, like on the D810, get a quick shortcut to some of the functions that we use quite often with video. I'll be dealing with these in a second, and the same if we're on stills, we hit I, we get a quick access to some of the features we can change a lot on there as well, like changing file sizes or picture controls. It's really handy. They've also changed the menu layout slightly. If we hit the menu button and scroll down, we see now we have a whole dedicated movie shooting menu option, and this will help quite a lot to get to all your movie settings. So we can change the destinations, the movie qualities all in one go, microphone sensitivity, and this camera features a built-in stereo microphone as well. And like on the D810, we now have a frequency response. You can set it to wide or vocal range, and wind noise reduction built in. And of course, most importantly, we have 50 or 60 frames per second at full HD, and that's 1080p. Awesome. Now let's have a look at some of the video features we have on this camera. I'm going to flick it over to video mode, hit live view, press I to enter our quick menu, and up here we can set our frame rates, quality, we have audio options, and all the way down here we also have a zebra function, so you can keep tab of our blown out highlights. This is quite handy, so you can nail the exposure when filming video. And we also have a quick access to headphone volume, which is also quite handy to have right there. Now let's take a quick look at some of the stills photography features of this camera. So we hit info up here and we change the light meter modes. We'll see that this camera also now features the new highlight weighted priority measuring option that we have on the D810, which is great. Because of that, you'll ensure that you don't blow out your highlights. It will automatically expose for the brightest areas in the picture, which is really great. So let's look at the frame rate options on this camera. Flick it all the way to continuous high. This camera features 6.5 frames per second, which is quite impressive for a full frame camera in this price category. Now let's look at the autofocus modes on this camera. Now, like on all the new Nikons, you have to press this button down in here to be able to change your autofocus modes. So you'll see in here, again, we have our single focus mode and our continuous focus mode. And if we change a little bit more, we have our normal area mode that we can change around. 9 points, 21 points you can select, or 51 points we can select. 3D mode, the new group function that works really awesome, and an auto area. Now, what's really interesting about the new auto area, especially in AFC mode, is that this has the uncanny ability of tracking faces and eyes. So that's really cool. You give it a go, you're shooting portraits, try it on this mode, see if you can track eyes. It's a great new little feature. And now also the spread of the autofocus points are very similar to that on the Nikon D810. It's fractionally smaller, it seems. It's like 5 to 10% smaller surface area on the D810, but at least it's not as small and basically unusable like on the D600 or D610. Awesome. Now let's take a look at file size options and the quality. You'll see on this camera we only have full size RAWs available. Unlike on the D810, we have a full size and a small RAW. But then at 24 megapixels, do you really need small RAWs? That's a perfect file size. Much more computer friendly than the massive files of the D810. So it's a great big plus for this camera. Now, a very handy video feature built into this camera, the same that we get on the Nikon D810, is a power aperture feature. Really handy. To switch that on, I'm just going to make sure I'm in movie mode. Into the menus. I'm going to go into my custom setup. Scroll all the way down to movie, and in here the first setting we get is we can assign the function and the preview buttons here on the front of the camera to actually open and close the aperture automatically. It's really great and handy. Unfortunately, these two buttons on the D750 is a little bit far apart. They're not nice and close together like on the D810, and it's a little bit awkward to get to the function button down here when you hold the camera in your hand. It takes a little bit to get used to. But yeah, let's see how it works. So the moment that's activated on power aperture, and if we switch to live view mode, let's see what happens. There we go. So we can now seamlessly step down and step up in our exposures using the two buttons in the front. It's a little bit slow to react. I have a feeling on the D810 is a little bit faster, but yeah, still works really great. Now this camera features Wi-Fi connectivity, which is great. We can hook it up to a smart device such as a tablet or phone. To activate it, we simply go into the setup menu, scroll all the way down to Wi-Fi, and in here we can enable it. Now under the network settings option here, you can view the name of the device to make it easy to find it on your smart device under your Wi-Fi options, so you can connect to the correct device. But before you can connect to this camera, you need to download and install the app called Nikon Wireless Mobile Utility. Now let's take a look at the ISO range on the camera. Hit ISO here. It goes all the way from the equivalent of 50 all the way up to the equivalent of 51,200. This is quite an impressive range, and we haven't tested it yet in detail, but it seems that it's actually still quite usable at an ISO of 12,800, which is amazing. So this is apparently the best performing Nikon out there at the moment in low light. Apparently even the autofocus system is great, and it focuses really great in low light, unlike some of the other cameras out there. So yeah, you have to test that one.